Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back to check out this brand new wave of Jurassic World Captivz from Toymonster International. These ones are, if you missed my unboxing video, these ones are the Dino Trackers. These were previously an Australian exclusive with no intentions of them releasing here in the United States. However, they now have, luckily, but just not in the Dino Trackers packaging. They've been released with the Epic Evolution packaging. I think there were just so many people that really wanted to see these figures get released here. We are now lucky enough to actually have them, which is great news because there are quite a few new species in this line, in this wave of figures that I personally really wanted to get my hands on. And if you did see my unboxing video, something that was interesting in that video is there was a little bit of a mix-up, a little bit of confusion, because on the back of the packaging for these guys, it states, or even actually on the side, it states that there are 14 to collect, and then on the back it gives you a little checklist. However, when you actually open them up and you pull the sleeve out that's inside, like the little advertisement for what else is included in the line, there it states that there are actually 16, because there is also a Giganotosaurus and an Apatosaurus. However, after speaking to a few different people, I think the general consensus is that those figures are not released here in the United States quite yet, and maybe that's going to be, a part of like the next wave, I guess. So I'll just have to keep paying attention anytime I go to Five Below, checking the back of the packaging to see if it shows off the Apatosaurus, I guess. And of course the Giganotosaurus. But again, we've got some really neat looking figures this time around, so let's jump to a closer look at all of these right now. Now, just like with any of the Captivz lines, a lot of the figures here are basically repaints. They're species that we've had before, so we don't need to go too thoroughly into most of them, but of course the ones that we haven't seen before we will take at least a bit of a closer look at. The first one is definitely a species and a figure, if it would focus, that we've had, quite a few times previously. It is the Pyro, and this new version of the Pyro I think is actually really nice. I really like the coloration of this one. As you can see, we have a greenish tone for the body, but we have these really cool gray stripes, and they kind of included gray on quite a few of the figures this time around. At first, when I was, unboxing these, I was starting to think every single figure was going to have gray on them. Luckily, that did not happen, but this one definitely does. Again, I think the gray striping plays off of the greenish tones quite nicely. We also have that gray up here on the top of the snout leading up into the crest of the Parasaurolophus. You can see that the eyes are painted with a nice black, and they even have a glossy look to them, which is awesome. Again, I'm always just so blown away by how much paintwork and how far into these figures Toymonster International always goes. When it comes to minifigures, Jurassic minifigures, I don't think anybody does it better. You can also see that we do have a nice dark wash on the figure as well, which is something they often include, which I always love. The beak is painted with a grayish tone, a dark gray. If my camera would focus on it, there you go. You can see a nice grayish tone, and you can see the tongue is painted as well. So that is definitely a really nice looking Parasaurolophus. I think the paintwork on it looks great, and of course it is a fantastic sculpt. We've also got the Dilophosaurus, which again is another figure we've had previously, just a repaint. This is one that we've actually had a ton of times, maybe more than any other figure, I think, at this point. And I really wish, like I said in the unboxing, that they would include the supersized sculpt in the main line, because I just feel like it looks way nicer than this one. This one's just, it's not terrible, but it's certainly not their best work, and obviously the supersized version is far superior to this. It's far better than this one, but you can see this one sports a very nice dark tone of color, and again another wash. You can see that throughout the course of the figure. They are very good at applying the washes to their figures. You can also see we've got an orange eye with a black pupil. We have the mouth, of course, open. You can see the teeth are painted. The tongue has a pinkish tone in there. Very nice pinkish tone the entire way through the inside of the mouth. The frill, of course, being extended means we get a nice little bit of flashiness, and we have like a greenish tone with some yellow stripes there coming out from the frill. You can also see a lighter tone up here on the inside of the crest. Again, a little bit more of that, it's like, that one's more of like a white, I think, like a sort of a watered down kind of a white, but it almost has a slightly grayish look. And then here on the underside, you can see a yellowish tone moving along the underside of the Dilophosaurus as well. And that's really about it for this one. Not too much in the way of coloration. And I don't think it's the best one they've released when it comes to this particular sculpt. I would definitely say that the more Jurassic Park style paint job that they had given us previously would be the best version, but this one's okay. We also have the T-Rex, and at first I almost thought that this one had a little bit of like a Walking with Dinosaurs type of a charm to it, but now having it in person, in hand, not so much. I mean, it sort of does with the kind of lighter tone and then the darker tone, and then you have like that orange in the throat, which it would have been more of a red for like a, you know, Walking with Dinosaurs type version. But I think it looks really good, the coloration that they have given it, and I believe this is one of the rare figures in the line, and you can see that it has this very metallic sort of silver tone that stripes through, and that's sort of the key, I think, for these figures when it comes to deciphering which ones are the rare figures. Whenever you see one of the figures that has that, you know, metallic silver, that is the rare release. There are 4 rare figures in this line, but you can see again that nice black tone or very dark gray tone that they have applied. Also a wash, it looks like, potentially, or maybe a dry brushing with like a lighter gray. And then you can see a light tone here for the underbelly. Same deal for the lower jaw. You can also see an orange there in the throat. You have the mouth again sculpted in an open position, so that means we get to look at the inside of the mouth and see that we have a nice light pink. What's interesting is you can actually see that the skin stretching has a bit of a darker pink, and the tongue has a very light pink. So like, I really feel like that's just another one of those moments where you can look at this and see how much work Toymonster International puts into these minis. It's crazy, crazy impressive. You can also see the nails are painted on the figure, not just on the feet, even on the hands as well. You know, those finger claws also have paintwork, and the eyes are painted with a yellow, given a black pupil, and then again you have that silver tone kind of running down through the course of the figure, ensuring that we know that this is one of the more rare releases from this line. We've also got the Pyro Raptor, and I think this is another really nice Pyro Raptor. In fact, so far, I don't know that they've gone wrong with any of their Pyro Raptor colorations, and this one would have looked really neat in this color if you had, you know, this one in the Dominion film. I just feel like with the fact that it was living in like an Arctic sort of a setting, this coloration would have worked perfect for that dinosaur. But you can see the eyes are painted yet again. The inside of the mouth is painted again with some pinkish tones. You've got the teeth all painted there. Nice bluish tone for the face. Yet again, a dark wash has been applied to this figure. You can see that the blue has extended up here into the feathers on the top of the head, as well as some silver coloration up there, which again means that this is one of the rare figures in the set. As you move down into the body, we do have a nice white. Again, you can see that dark wash is present there, highlighting all of the feathers. You have more blues as you lead out here into the arms of the Pyro Raptor, and you look at the very nice plumage we have out here. Those blues really shine and play off of the white tones, but you can also see that we have more of that silver, and I think that looks really neat to have the silver, you know, that metallic silver in the feathers right there on the arms. I just think that looks excellent on the figure. But as you move back, you can see that we have more of the blue showing up here in the legs. You also have a grayish tone for the feet and, of course, part of the legs. You can see that that dark wash is present yet again on the legs as well. And then you lead out into the tail feathers, and you basically have the white running down the center with the blue running out and really highlighting the feathers along the outside edge. Same deal for the underside of the Pyro Raptor. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot, or there's also actually a darker gray for the lower jaw, but there's not a whole lot of coloration on this one, but definitely enough, and I think it looks absolutely phenomenal. I would say it's probably one of my favorite versions of the Pyro Raptor so far. We've also got the Compsognathus. Now, this guy doesn't have too much when it comes to paintwork, but I am really psyched to see a different color variant for the Compy. But you can see that we do have a nice yellowish tone for the primary body color. We have a darker brown that sort of stripes along through the course of the entire figure, starting up there in the head, running all the way out into the tail. At a certain point here in the tail, it does take over the tail primarily with that dark brown, which looks really quite nice. We also have a white for the underbelly, and then you can see that overtakes the legs as well. The mouth again is open, so you can see the pinkish tone there for the inside of the mouth. You can also see the teeth are painted, and you have looks like a green and then a black pupil for the eye. The eye is definitely a bit large on this one, but considering it is a pretty darn small figure, that's kind of to be expected. It's not something that's going to be easy to paint, I would think, especially when it comes to a mass-produced figure, but that is definitely another super nice looking Compsognathus, if you ask me. Then when it comes to one of the new species, we have ourselves a Nudoceratops, and look at that figure. Like, when it comes to screen accuracy and the way that this Nudoceratops appears in the Jurassic World franchise, man, did they ever nail it perfectly. Everything from the shape of the frill to the size of the head in comparison to the body, the tail length, everything in my opinion looks great on this one. Definitely an absolutely beautiful Jurassic World style Nudoceratops. You can see, if my camera would focus, there you go. You have a light tone here in the face. You've also got a dark wash present. You can see you have some darker variations of browns as you move up there into the eye area and up here on the bump above the nose. The horns are painted with a dark brown as well. You can also see that we do have that silver tone again on this one, just like we had seen on the other rare figures. I think this is the second to last of the rare figures, but you can see we've got a pretty cool little design up here as you have some spots of that silver leading through the darker tones of the head right there, and you can also see that we have a lighter variation of color that sort of runs around the outer edge of that frill. It looks so nice, absolutely beautiful. You also have a different tone, like a lighter variation of a brown running over that. But then as you move back into the body, you basically just have that mixture of the lighter tone and the dark wash at play back here until you lead down into the legs and they darken up a good bit with kind of like a watered down variation of a dark, it looks like a black actually. I was going to say a dark brown, but it's more of a black. But you can see when you get nice and close. Again, like, look at how nice that sculpt is. Even that front foot sculpt there lifting up off of the ground looks absolutely gorgeous. And then as you move up through the course of the figure, you can see how nice the skin texture looks. Even the fine detail on the back of the frill is really, really impressive. But man, the Captivz line, they're just so good. Toymonster International is absolutely fantastic when it comes to these newer sculpts that they've been releasing. Like, they have yet to release a newly sculpted figure that was anything short of absolutely incredible, if you ask me. When you go back to the supersized figures like the Ankylosaurus and Dilophosaurus that they had released, and then you look at this one and the Kentrosaurus that we had seen for the first time in the color change line that recently released, although it actually debuted in this line, which you'll see the original version here. But again, all of these figures have been so unbelievable recently, and yet again, this Nudoceratops is exactly the same. We also have one of my favorites in this entire wave. We have the Dimetrodon, which I think every single time they release a Dimetrodon, it is a home run, but I really like the colors of this one. And again, this is one of those figures, when I looked at the original promotional images of it, I was like, it looks pretty cool, but not that great. But in hand, man, it's so much nicer than I expected it to be. You can see we basically have a yellowish tone with a dark brown wash that seems to have been applied, and then they maybe dry brush some more of the yellow out. It's hard to tell, but it looks like they've highlighted a lot of the osteoderms moving along the side of the Dimetrodon here with the yellowish tone. You can also see, again, the mouth is open, has a maroon type color for the inside of the mouth on this one. You've got the teeth painted again on this figure. You can also see the eyes are painted. It's just that they're very dark, so it's a little hard to really decipher the paintwork for the eyes from the paintwork of the face, since it has such a dark tone. You can also see we have a reddish tone up there on the top of the head, and then as you move up into the sail, you also have that reddish tone up there, but you can see the dark wash playing off of that as well. And I love this design that they have running through the sail with that really nice sort of yellowish stripe and then that little loop that they have in there. It's so smooth on the figure. It just looks incredibly natural on this. And then as you lead out into the tail, the yellowish tone becomes a bit more, I would say abundant would probably be the way I put it, running along the back of the tail. You can see it just really shows up a lot more than you see through the rest of the figure. But that is an absolutely awesome Dimetrodon. Definitely one of my favorites of this line. Then you've got the Giganotosaurus. The Gig is probably my least enjoyable figure in this line, just because the coloration is a little bit weird, but it still looks pretty cool. It looks better in person than I expected it to. But you can see we basically have a reddish tone for a large portion of the body. We also have a dark wash present on it, and then you have like this green. It's kind of like a bit of a brighter green than I would expect, running along the back, kind of highlighting all of those ridges moving along the back of the Giga and then running all the way out onto the tail. You can also see it appears in the arms, it appears down into the legs. The legs do transition though to a very dark gray for the feet, and then as you lead up into the face, you have a little bit more of that green, basically like right behind the eye, but then you have a very interesting grayish tone with the dark wash, and that area almost reminds me of the Dinosaur Revolution Tyrannosaurus with the way that looked. Could you imagine if this had just like a dark tone with this tone kind of leading back and designing, giving it that kind of Dinosaur Revolution style coloration? That would have looked awesome if you ask me. But you can see the eye is also painted with a yellow, given a black pupil. The teeth are painted. You can kind of see inside the mouth, but not too much. Like we can kind of make out the tongue in there, but you just can't really get a good view because the mouth isn't open all that far. But it's an alright version of the Giga. It's definitely not my favorite, but it's not terrible either. But then you also have a Quetzalcoatlus, and I would say the Quetzalcoatlus is definitely one of my favorite versions of this one. You've got a nice yellowish tone here for the beak, kind of running up and over the top of the eye area right there. You also have an orangish tone that kind of circles around the eye, then a black for the eye coloration. You can also see some grays kind of creeping up there and running up into the beak. There's a dark wash present on the figure for sure. Very abundant through the body, but you can see it in the face as well. You can also see the inside of the mouth sports the tongue, which has a pinkish tone. No other coloration for the inside of the mouth, but I don't think it really needs it. As you lead back here, you can see we've got a very dark area of coloration with some of the gray kind of creeping through, but they certainly tried to darken those pycnofibers right there in that area. And then as you move down into the body, you basically see a kind of like a light grayish tone, or maybe a variation of a white, but it's been hit with a dark wash, which kind of makes it look a little bit gray. And then the skin of the wings is basically a little bit darker than what you see for the rest of the body. And that's really about it, honestly, as far as the coloration goes. There's not a whole lot else going on, but I don't think it really needs it. I feel like the coloration on this just looks really, really good, and definitely is one of my favorite versions of the Quetzalcoatlus that has released so far. We've also got the Apatosaurus, and this one sports a brownish tone, and this one also is another of the figures that we've had in the past, so it's not something we really need to go over, but you can see again the brownish tone that we have for the body. You also have a dark wash present on this one, and then the patterning that we have going on through it is like a darker brown, kind of a circle, and then within those circles you've got a yellowish spot that appears on the figure, and then you also have that darker brown kind of running along the neck and the spinal column all the way out onto the tail with a striping sort of effect. And that's really about it when it comes to the coloration of this one. You do have a black for the eyes, but honestly there's not a whole lot else going on when it comes to the colors of the Apatosaurus. I don't really feel like it needs it though. I think it looks nice, and the dark wash and the brown, actually dark brown wash and the lighter brown of the body color works really quite nice for a sauropod, so I think they did a very good job on this one as well. You've also got the Indominus Rex. Now this one is a very dark gray, but seems to kind of have like a dry brushing of a brown in certain spots, like a lighter variation of a brown. You also have some like random greenish, yellowish tones sort of showing up here and there. Not really all that nicely applied, but not terrible either. You can kind of see them in the quills down here in the arms as well. Super dark wash applied to this one, which really, really darkens up a lot of the body, but you can see areas of like a gray, like down into the feet. You can kind of see a gray showing up even there on the knee. You also have more of that in the face. You can see the eyes are painted with a red, given a slit-like black pupil. The mouth, of course, has a pinkish tone for the inside of the mouth, and you can also see that the teeth are painted. Again, not a whole lot else going on with the Indominus that doesn't really need it, I guess. It's got a good bit of coloration to it, and it looks, fairly natural, maybe like the Indominus sort of camouflaging in a wooded area you could possibly see with coloration like this. Again, the fact that the Indominus can camouflage makes the figure look basically like it could look possibly in a film or in real life or something in any version, any color, because it could just be camouflaged. So, an okay Indominus. We've also got the Kentrosaurus. Again, I believe this was the very first time we saw the Kentrosaurus, but luckily it reappeared in the color-changing line with a much better coloration to it. But this one looks pretty good as well. We basically have a light gray or a white for the lower body, and then as you move up, you can see they've taken a darker gray, a very watered-down version of a darker gray, almost like a wash-like version, and then applied it so it darkens as you lead up toward the top. And then the plates have that silver metallic look again, because this is another of the rare figures, so that's pretty much exactly how you tell. And you can see that runs all the way out onto the spikes of the tail and everything. You have that silver tone the entire way out. The shoulder spike, though, didn't really get any coloration, unfortunately, but you can see a black for the eye, a little sloppy as far as its placement, but oh, now we just lost focus completely. But you can see even some of that grayish tone runs up into the face as well. Not too much else going on when it comes to the coloration of this one, but I think that works pretty nicely as well. And again, as far as like a special edition version, it does look really cool. The sculpt again is phenomenal though. Then you've got the Indoraptor, and look at the really nice greenish tones on this Indoraptor. Primarily you have a green with a dark wash, which really helps to highlight all of those scales on this figure. You can also see it gets a little bit darker as you lead up into the top of the Indoraptor, moving along the tail and everything. And then you have the yellow stripe moving through the body as well, again reminiscent to the original version of the Indoraptor. So I like that they still keep it looking like the Indoraptor should, but just altered the coloration quite a bit. You can see the eyes are painted with a red, given a black pupil, pinkish tone for the inside of the mouth, and again a nice amount of paintwork for the teeth, which looks pretty good. And again, as you move through, I can't help but absolutely fall in love with this Indoraptor even more. Like, it's definitely one of the nicest looking versions, maybe even nicer than the original coloration of the Indoraptor. Looking at it like this, I honestly feel like Jurassic World should have given it the greenish tone in the film. Could you imagine something like this, like creepily stalking other dinosaurs through a jungle, just like sneaking through, almost looking like it's camouflaged? And man, that would be just a really cool visual. Definitely a beautiful repaint for the Indoraptor. And the final figure, and also the other new species we have in the line, we have the Monolophosaurus. This one looks awesome. Like, talk about a gorgeous, gorgeous sculpt. The detail is extremely crisp. You have beautiful scale detail through the entire figure, a small line of ridges moving along the spinal column. You can see larger ridges up here in the back of the neck, a little bit larger scale detail there in the neck as well. The crest there for our Monolophosaurus is very nicely sculpted. You can see the nostrils, the skin texture in the face looks great. The teeth look okay. The paintwork isn't perfect, and I think it's just a little bit too thick, so it doesn't show off how nice the actual sculpting of the teeth is, but that looks okay as well. You can see the tongue right there is painted with a pink and sticking up on the inside of the mouth. We have a grayish tone for, actually like a bluish tone more so than a gray, in the face, and you can see a dark wash has been applied that kind of runs back here into the neck. And then as you lead back, you start to pick up a greenish tone that follows along the back of the Monolophosaurus, extending down into the thighs and then following all the way out there onto the tail. And you can see again how nice that dark wash really highlights all of the scales on this figure. And you can see the bluish tone as you move further down into the lower part of the dinosaur, showing up quite nicely. The feet are nicely sculpted as well. You can see dew claws are present. The nails don't have paintwork, but still looks really good. Definitely an absolutely incredible looking Monolophosaurus. I would say probably the best Monolophosaurus that we've seen in any Jurassic line so far. For the most part, all of these figures stand pretty nicely as well. The Monolophosaurus sort of balances on its tail, so it's got a nice amount of stability. The Indoraptor, of course, is quadrupedal. Same deal for the Kentrosaurus. Same deal for the Dimetrodon. You're not really going to have any balancing issues with those guys. The Quetzalcoatlus I have had some issues with in the past, but this one stands really nicely. The Giga, though, is a little sketchy. This guy I have some problems with. He doesn't balance perfectly. I can get him to stand, but I kind of have to lean him back, so there we go. He is standing currently on his own. The Nudoceratops, again, is a quadrupedal figure, so you're not going to have any standing issues with that. Same deal for the Apatosaurus. Same deal for the Parasaurolophus. Got to try to find spots to put these guys. The Pyro Raptor is lucky enough to have the feathers of the arm help hold it up, so we'll get him back there. The Tyrannosaurus as well is another one that's nice at balancing because it has the tail to balance on, but as you can see, it actually doesn't need it. The Dilophosaurus, though, is always a nightmare to me. It never wants to stand. Same deal for this one, so I have to continue to lean him on other dinosaurs. The Compy stands very nicely, but it leans on the tail, and that's why it can stand so nicely. And the Indominus is the only other one which I have had plenty of times with no issues standing, but this one does have a bit of a balancing issue. So I don't feel like we need sizes, comparisons, anything like that, because we are very well aware of the size of these Captivz this far into the line. But honestly, again, this is another round of awesome Captivz. I think I get more excited for a new line of Captivz than most other things in life, because these figures are just always so beautiful. They are consistently some of the most high quality, most incredible sculpt and painted figures that I see in the Jurassic toy line, period. Whether it be Mattel or any other company producing Jurassic World toys, the Captivz are always some of the most high quality figures that you will find anywhere. And same case here for this line. You've got another round of 14 incredible figures, all with fantastic sculpts and paint jobs. The weakest links for me would be the Dilophosaurus, just because I think they really need to replace that sculpt with the supersized sculpt and just, of course, you know, size it back to the size that we would need it for these guys. But the Giganotosaurus would be the other one that I would say is the least impressive in this line, just because I'm not a huge fan of the paint. The sculpt is awesome. Probably the best looking version of a Giganotosaurus for the Jurassic World line when it comes to a toy line like this. But the paint job just isn't my first choice. It's okay, it's just not great. They've definitely had better ones. But as you move into all of the other figures, I think every single other figure in this line looks incredible. You know, sculpt, paint, everything that they've done for those figures, I think all look great. They've definitely come up with some very nice paint schemes and paint jobs, applied them beautifully. And again, considering their size, the paint jobs are always incredibly impressive to see just how much effort and, you know, paint they put into these figures. There is a lot that goes into these guys, considering how small they are, making them honestly even more impressive than most of the Mattel figures that are of a much larger size. And then on top of that, we also have a few new species entering the line this time with the Monolophosaurus and Nudoceratops, as well as technically the Kentrosaurus, even though to us here in the United States it was introduced to us with the color change line. I believe it actually debuted in this line. But again, another round of incredible, incredible figures, hoping we get that Apatosaurus and Therizinosaurus at some point soon that was advertised in the booklet, because I would love to complete this line. But as of right now, I at least got all of the figures I was most looking forward to, and again, 14 fantastic Captivz. So if you are interested in picking these up for yourself, head to your local Five Below, because that is exactly where you can find them here in the United States. Grab them while they last, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.